Welcome to Deconstructing Digital, the podcast where we deconstruct the opportunities and challenges faced by the built environment when digitalizing their processes. I'm Amelia Fletcher-Batburn, and I'm joined today by Matthew Ayres, Group Managing Director of the Bennie Group. If you could please introduce yourself, that would be fantastic.
Well, good afternoon. Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me again. I'm Matthew Ayres. I am Managing Director of the Bennie Group. We're a fourth generation family business. We've been going for 90 years this year. It's our 90th year in business, and we operate in the construction, equipment and manufacturing spaces. So we sell soil, we sell forklifts, and we sell shoes that we hand make in Northamptonshire.
Wow, fantastic. Well, today what we're going to be talking about is the importance of breaking down silos when you're looking at powering growth. So it'd be fantastic if before we focus on that, we really think about the initial stages when you're looking at starting a growth journey. So when you were looking at assessing your tech landscape, where did you really start?
I suppose if we go kind of back to some of the context and the fundamentals, the Bennie Group, as I've just said, is kind of 90 years old this year. And so when I took over, when I joined the business originally full-time in 2018, I joined a legacy business, right? It had been finding its way with technology. It was a group of companies that had been bolting things on. And ultimately, and very classically, there was no strategy. There was no plan, and everything was ad hoc and messy, and it required a lot of manual intervention. There were lots of silos all over the place, and nothing was particularly joined up. And where it was joined up, it just wasn't done very well. So the starting point was to kind of rip it all out and start again, right?
Wow.
And think about ways of, if we're going to grow this, we've got a plan and we want to grow this business in the future. We don't fully know, obviously, what that's going to look like, but we need to have a stable kind of core base from which to do it and pick the right systems and processes and technologies to make that happen. So yeah, step one was tidy stuff up, basically.
And you mentioned strategy there. I think it's really interesting when people are looking at their digital strategy. What was important to you when you were assessing that strategy? Was it around cost savings? Was it revenue growth? Was it processes? What really sparked what you were trying to achieve?
I think for me, what you spend and being commercial is obviously absolutely vital. But I think actually in the world of technology and IT, it isn't about cost saving. It is about being efficient. But they're different things. I think fundamentally it's how do you make it an enabler for your organization. So it isn't about cutting spend. It's probably about spending more, because your savings will come from elsewhere, whether that be you're going to increase profits by cutting maybe some headcount or making a process quicker and more efficient. And there's always lots of kind of, I suppose, industry reports and pieces out there that will say, actually, you should be spending X percentage of your revenue, you should be spending on technology to invest and to grow your business, because without it, you don't have kind of functioning processes or indeed a functioning business.
And that's really interesting as well. You talked about investment. So it's actually that upfront costs that you have to put in order to deliver your end-term goal. Is there a particular way you looked at the development of business cases when it came to justifying that investment?
Yeah, I always remember the conversations with the board, with Mum basically, and the finance director at the time were always slightly tricky, because I mean, the starting point was basically we're going to run a multi-year project to kind of rebuild the IT infrastructure of the business. And by the way, I need to spend £100,000. And it's also not something you'll physically see. So, a traditional kind of construction-based business is very used to spending, I say, £100,000 on a piece of equipment that, is nice and shiny and yellow and you could see it.
Yeah.
This was a load of software and integrate and stuff in the background. But there was, and of course the board themselves were never technically going to use most of it. It's not like Mum will come into work every day and log into the account system. That's just not that sharp, right? So they were difficult conversations to try and justify and explain to them, why, and it was about translating it. So why do the accounts take so long to produce? Well, they take so long to produce at board level because we've got, 2 or 3 different systems that are trying to pull that data together, and ultimately they break and they don't work. And actually, if we kind of get rid of some of that stuff, then you're going to get your accounts quicker. And that's what you're spending your 100 grand on.
I think that's one of the things that people really do struggle with when it comes to that digitalization piece, like locking in a solid strategy that everyone is bought into, but then justifying that investment. So it's brilliant to understand it's about making it relatable to the people that have to make that investment and then proving that through. We talked about the fact that silos, obviously it's important to eliminate those when you're looking at rapid growth. Can you give us an example where technology really did enable you to grow exponentially?
So for us, I suppose the technology has been the key enabler for the rapid growth, because without it, we couldn't do any of it. So, I mean, the last 5 years have been problematic and fun and different and crazy for any business. But if we look at what we've done in our business in the last 12 months, we've got a multi-year strategy. 2024 was the realization of it. We've been planning for it, trying to make it happen, get deals over the line and get stuff working. But 2024 saw it happen. And those were largely mergers and acquisitions in our business. And they just would not have happened so successfully without technology underpinning it. Because what it really boils down to is integration. So we talk about buying another business and bringing it together. And of course, Causeway has some experience in doing that itself. It's on a rapid growth journey and is buying up lots of other businesses. I don't pretend to be anything like Causeway. Kind of that guys when we're not that impressive. But we buy these businesses. So we bought 2 forklift businesses last year, and we had to integrate them into our existing forklift business to get the right value for what we need to align with our strategic priorities and align with what we were doing. And without the right technological infrastructure there in the systems and the internal capability of our teams to make that happen, it just would not have worked. So for us, we, to blow our own trumpet, we did 2 acquisitions and a merger with another business unit, and we got quicker every time we did it. So it was really great to see that at the beginning of 2024 we were doing an integration in 90 days, and the next integration we did in 60. And then the next integration we did in 30. So we're able to onboard these multi-million-pound business units and get them into our systems in as quickly as 30 days from kind of that go live point, which is so important. So technology is, calling it an enabler is, I suppose, is an understatement, because it is literally the key part of the puzzle that makes it all happen.
Excellent. I loved as well when you were talking there, you talked about the people component, which often can be secondary to when people select the technology. How have you worked within your business to ensure that culturally the technology you're trying to implement is being adopted?
Yeah, I think I actually gave a chat on this morning to the team, and I was encouraging all of our organisation to get excited about change. Because I said, look, we had an exciting 2024. 25 is going to be just as exciting, if not bigger. But please don't think the change is done or the change is going to stop. And it comes as no surprise that if you're a rapidly growing business, stuff is going to change, and it's going to mean continued new pieces of software or new processes or new ways of working. And your teams have really got to get behind that and embrace it. Honestly, I don't think there is no golden nugget that explains how you do this. For me, it's just about constant communication. And it's about being really clear and upfront and saying, here's some change. It's not going to happen to start with, but then it is going to happen. And then it's going to be a bit different, but it's also going to be better. It'll be hard for you to get on board with that to start with, but actually if you persevere with it and try, the change will ultimately be good. And I think it's always important as part of any change process to make sure you've got points to call out and say, look, this particular change hasn't worked. Have we got a way of reversing it or adjusting the strategy and doing it differently? And I think with our teams, we've had our successes and our failures, but it is ultimately just about continuing to communicate with them, take on board the feedback, and kind of work it through from there. We definitely haven't got it right yet. We've got a couple more acquisitions to come through in the business this year, and I know we're still going to make mistakes along the journey as we do it.
I think you made a fantastic point earlier as well around the last 5 years and how volatile that's been and the amount of change that has meant we've had to overcome and embrace. And I think when you look forward, that amount of change is only going to continue, especially when you look at things like artificial intelligence coming into your business, and that acknowledgement of change and the fact we have to accept it is critically important. Do you have a change management function within your business? Is there any way that you've particularly wrapped resources around that?
Really interesting that you asked the question, because we didn't, but we're starting to form it. So it's in any business of, I suppose, a chunky size, you end up having all your typical core business administrative functions. So your IT, your finance, your safety, your marketing, your HR, all of that stuff that kind of sits centrally to run the administrative side of the business. What we found was that that's great when you're doing BAU. Yeah, no, you've got to, you're turning over 15, 20 million pounds a year statically, that's fine. But actually, as you're growing and onboarding businesses, well, who's project managing that?
Yeah.
How are you going to make that work? So one of the roles we created last year was a kind of a head of projects role to start to bring in that process that was around, over the next 2 or 3 years, we will probably integrate about 10 organizations into the Bennie Group in some form. And we need to make sure we're ready to do that. And actually, as a result of integrating them, you're going to get little side projects that come off the side that are, you need to we put the system in 5 years, but now we need to re-platform it.
Yeah.
This website needs to change. What are the marketing team doing in the projects here? Actually, we need to think about what's our communication strategy with our telephone system, for example.
Yeah.
We had a telephone system that was built for 100 users, but now it's going to be have we thought about that? So
Yeah.
all of these side projects then come out, and they're not necessarily about direct business integrations, or not necessarily always about IT. I think we've got one in flight at the moment to change the on hold music and the visitors, like to think about all important things. I was so anti, and I'm like, we're not spending this money, what a waste of money. And then someone sent me a demo, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds so much better. Actually, so that we definitely need to do that now. There are all these kind of small little things that, and someone needs to pick up and own them, because they're part of the evolving, changing business to ultimately improve customer service and the customer quality and the service output we're giving.
And it is about that delivery to the customers. We obviously talked about the importance of strategy. And when you're growing, then your ability to scale. And that all leads into your target operating model, of which people, process, and technology are the key pieces. It sounds like you're well equipping yourself for any further changes that you're looking to implement. One of the things that we have found at Causeway when we've been acquiring and moving businesses together is the importance of data. How have you overcome any issues that you faced when bringing businesses in?
If you look at our technological roadmap, it's been very much around as I've talked already, get the right systems and processes in place. I mean, you've got a scalable group of businesses, which we have and we did. And part of that was around making management information easier. It wasn't just about accounts, it was about the data that underpinned it. And that was absolutely critical for us to get out what we need to make important business decisions. So we've really developed internal skills around making sure our IT team have got the right skill set, not just to fix a computer or a system, but actually interrogate a database,
Brilliant.
generate reports and provide them to different parts of the businesses. So there's that element. Then there's also been, I suppose, the cultural element of banning spreadsheets. So we have this rule in the business where spreadsheets are banned, and people go, "Well, that's ridiculous." We don't mean physically not using Microsoft Excel. What we mean is not using Microsoft Excel as a database. Yeah. So you don't code into it and store numbers in it. You review data in it. It's Microsoft Excel should be a tool to review extracted data and play with it, and look at it and model it and learn from it. If you want to edit the core data, you should go back into a proper database. So you should go back into the systems, the platforms you're buying from software vendors instead. So we've had an element of we need data out of our systems that underpinned our technical strategy. That would then inform our business strategy and how our target operating model and things like that, or how that all come together. But there has been the cultural piece as well. So how do you get the good quality data out of the systems? You've got to tell the staff, you've got to tell the teams, you're not allowed random spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And what we have this kind of going joke as well, where we call people islands. So if they go off and build their own, secret spreadsheets, they get the term island comes out. So you'll be Fred, you built an island, haven't you? Naughty, do you need a system? Can IT help? Can the project team? Can someone come along and find a better way of doing this for you? And the second piece, of course, is quality of data.
Yeah.
And it can be simple things like postcodes being formatted correctly, or simple things like that in data mean so much, because we can quickly pull out and go, right, we want to buy a business in this area. What customers have we already got across the UK that may or may not overlap in there? How does that work? And within a couple of minutes, you can have populated that, built a fancy, modeled it, put it in a slide deck, and you're starting to build your business case very quickly and make decisions from that based on what you're doing. Of course, if that data is inaccurate or poorly formatted, it just throws out a load of rubbish and it actually isn't no use. So there are a couple of things you have to do at a technical layer, the core IT stuff, but then you've got to make sure the culture and the behaviours align to support that output.
One of my favourite bits you mentioned there is around the island. So obviously one of the things we're talking about today is breaking down that silo and having these people as islands, as silos, and even culturally, you're trying to drive out that behaviour through how you're tackling those individuals, I think is excellent. Yeah. And it shows how it isn't just about the technology that you're implementing, but the culture you're wrapping around it to really ensure that you're driving the right processes and behaviors.
And it's like, yeah, people know that, are there secret, people at Benny, I'm coming for you. I know there are secret spreadsheets out there. And people know, right? And they will have, oh, I've got this secret spreadsheet. And they'll go to our data guy and say, I've got this spreadsheet. And he'll roll his eyes and go, not much use, your data won't be correct. And this is the thing, they know now, right? So they know they've committed a sin, and they need some help to resolve it. So that it's there. It'll take a good couple of years for stuff to change. But that is then about implementing new technology.
Yeah.
People have got these spreadsheets or little databases and stuff they built themselves, hidden away, squirreled away as these secret islands, because a piece of software isn't delivering what they need. It either doesn't exist in your stack,
Yeah.
or you haven't trained staff in the right way. So there's a kind of a question then back to the business to say, how do we give this? Is this spreadsheet necessary? Should it be there? Should we be using data and reporting in different ways? Or do we actually need to go off and do something that's constantly reviewing and having that conversation assembled?
And putting that end user at the heart of those discussions. What is it that they're trying to achieve?
Yeah. Why have they created that spreadsheet?
Yeah.
And what are they doing? Ultimately, it's usually about serving a customer somewhere. So it's like, they'll be doing it, there's some month-end billing process that just makes it a bit quicker for them. You go, well, actually, why aren't we doing this differently? Or, I do this for this customer because that's what they asked for. I was like, could we do it different? It usually tends to come back to a customer, speeding up a customer requirement somewhere.
So completely the right intent around it being customer first. And then it's about building the sustainable processes that enable you to serve all of your customers in the best possible way.
Because, any scalable and growing business, and I say this to my teams all the time, has got to be just that and efficient.
Yeah.
You've got to, when you scale, you've got to do it in the right way. You can't replicate the bad processes. You need to kind of replicate streamlined and efficient processes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just adding to your cost base, adding to your cost base, adding to your cost base. And what you also can't do is move at speed and agility, because those things slow you down. If we're doing integrations quicker because we're changing stuff and how we work and we're learning. That just wouldn't be possible if we weren't scaling in the right way and being efficient in what we were doing.
I think it's actually when you talk about scaling as well. So we talked earlier about the importance of the quality of data and the availability of data. How do you see that evolving with things such as artificial intelligence coming into play and potentially things like automation when it comes to your growth journey and digital strategy?
I think for me, we're in all honesty, I'd love to be further on the journey with AI, but I think being kind of this small, semi-traditional family business that's 90 years old, our concept of AI, in terms of where we are as a business, I would look to our vendors to support us on that and say, what are you putting into your stack? So, the most obvious one that we probably all use is Microsoft. They've got AIs in your face every day. They talk about their Copilot product, and I don't really know what that means. All of my staff have got 100% no idea what it means. So we're looking to our vendors for how we can improve things in our business. I think where I sit in my decision making, my understanding is, I know it's coming, and actually, I think there's one of those things with technology, isn't it? You can run away with buzzwords like the cloud, doesn't actually, it's just a server. It doesn't really mean anything. People get really excited by it, but actually, I think AI is not a buzzword that you can run away with, and it be just that kind of a fancy buzzword for some software companies to sell some stuff. It actually is going to have a real difference to your business. Because it's going to automate stuff. It's going to save time. It's going to make decisions for you. We've all heard of ChatGPT. My staff don't know what Microsoft Copilot and AI and all those different things. They know what ChatGPT is. And, the number of emails I now see going around the organization where I go, oh, well, that wasn't written by a very good email. All of that stuff is starting to come through, and it's getting people in the business to think, and me to think, and the decision makers to go, how are we harnessing bits like that and putting them into what we're doing? We service lots of forklift trucks. Would it be better to get ChatGPT to enhance and make consistent the language that we use across our different service teams, across our great business? 100%. And it's thinking about how do we find the right piece of software to help us do that consistently, but also deliver the right level of kind of customer-focused service. Because you don't want AI to then make you lose some of the human element. Because you're going to have that fine balance with AI, aren't you, between the human interaction, but there with the human kind of man-made mistakes that come as a result, versus the efficiencies and better and quicker decision-making you get as a result of it. Like anything in life, it's all about a fine balance.
I think one of the excellent things that you've talked about the group that you've been on from a Bennie Group perspective is actually you're laying all of the foundations that enable you to embrace artificial intelligence. Because ultimately, it's around understanding your data, having good quality data. If you're overlaying some of those technologies on top of poor data, you aren't going to receive the outputs that you need. So it sounds like you're laying all those solid foundations, which mean you'll be in a great place to adopt it. And ultimately, if you use it right, it actually improves your employees' day-to-day jobs and the outcomes they're able to implement and deliver, which is
Well,
great.
absolutely. I mean, to use a construction analogy, it is literally about laying the foundation. You don't build a building from the top down, do you? You have to build from the floor up, and it's the same with technology. You can go out there and buy bits and run them in isolation and do whatever you need to do with them, but actually, they're not part of a. That's not even about integrating. If they're not part of a wider strategy, integrated or not, they're not. As you said, they're not going to give you the right outputs that you need. So you've got to, as we've done, is build that kind of foundation layer so you can bolt bits on in line with your strategy so that it all comes together nicely. So that when new technology comes along, so there'll be a new AI at some point.
Yeah.
AI, whatever it is, the next piece of technology that's going to change consumers' lives, businesses' lives, the way we operate, the way we work, the way we engage. That next piece of technology will come along, and it'll need a way to bolt into what we do.
Exactly.
And it's about, as you say, having the right foundations to keep building on it, just like you would in construction. You do all the earthworks and the earth moving first, and then you put the foundations in, and you do the base layer, and then the steel and the glass and the first fix and the electrics and everything and the roof, and it all comes. But then you put an extension on, so you want to make sure you get it all right, right? The analogy works
Exactly.
perfectly.
It really does. What is the biggest challenge you've had to overcome when delivering your digital strategy?
The biggest challenge, God, I mean, there are many, but that's the fun, right? And if it was easy, it would be terribly boring. Ultimately, it comes down to the people, right? You can architect and design and plan something and execute in such a way, but it is about communicating that out to people in the right way, getting them on board, engaging them. I mean, if I think back kind of 5, 6, 7 years ago when we started our tech change journey in the business, like, right, we're going to implement this new system, and it's going to mean you're going to need to use purchase orders in this particular way
Yeah.
in a system. Well, what do you mean? Well, when you spend the company's money, it would be really nice if you kind of had some respect for it and we kind of accrued that money in the accounts in the right way. And well, I can't just send an email with my initials on anymore on the day. No, because finance have got no idea that you've actually spent the money. So what we really need to do is do this. But why do we need to do that? That's slow. Yeah, but it actually makes the accounts quicker, and it's generating data, and it's doing lots
Yeah.
of stuff. 7 years on, no one questions. It's embedded now. No one really questions it. But it's small challenges like that become the big thing. And we see it when we buy a business as well, because we'll come along as, we're not a Goliath, but we'll come along as a larger business and say, oh, we need to do this process this way now. And it's about getting, a team of kind of 5 people. Why do you do that? We used to do it like this. Yeah, that's great, but, that's only scalable to X point, and actually we're at Y point. So we have got to do these things differently, and it's about getting their buy-in through that process. So people are always the biggest challenge, but that's the fun. Everyone responds differently. Everybody has a different way of looking at it. And you're not going to agree with everybody all the time. They're not going to agree with you or the strategy, but it is about how you can take them forward in the best way.
Are you finding there are any additional asks when it comes to reporting, when it comes to sustainability? Is that high on your agenda when you're looking at your digital strategy to try and deliver against some of those key metrics?
I'd love to say yes, because that's a buzzword, and we should do that, and green and carbon and sustainable, all good, but also just no. And I think that's a shame. Maybe I'm being too frank, and maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but we're ultimately led by the customer. And I should say the Bennie Group is obviously a big supporter of ensuring we have a sustainable planet going forward.
Yep.
We've run our business for 90 years. We plan to do it for another 90. If the planet's burnt itself up in the next 90 years, I don't have a business. So we have to think about that. We sell, we're one of the biggest natural topsoil providers in the UK. That's, soil is a great carbon capture tool. So, we understand our green credentials there. And we sell lots of electric forklift trucks, which are a big part of kind of changing from and decarbonising and moving from combustion engines to electric. But of course, carbon still, combustion engine still has its place in the world, and ultimately it's around what the customer wants. It's also about the limitations. We've got lots of customers we work with who'll go, I would love 20 new electric forklift trucks. We do the quote, we get there, and one of the things we do is check their connection to the grid. And then then the grid turn around and say, that'll be 250 grand, please, to upgrade the grid connection. and you get, well, we'll just buy some diesel. The customer goes, we'll just buy the diesel once. So we have all of those limitations playing through, and it, for me, it's such a shame because there's so much more we could be doing, but we're ultimately let down by
The infrastructure.
the infrastructure, right? Other parts of the jigsaw puzzle that don't, the economic, the bigger kind of macroeconomic side of things that don't come to the table to support what we're doing, which
I'd never thought about that, actually, the amount of dependencies there are that actually enable the players within the built environment to be able to deliver against the sustainable goals. So all the intent is there, but if actually the underpinning infrastructure isn't available, then you're not in a place to be able to do it.
and it's a bit the same with soil as well. Well, we are, I'm going to say this kind of obnoxiously, but we are one of the biggest and best soil brands in the UK. Or we run two of them, right? British Sugar, Topsoil, and Boughton Loam are some of the best known names in soil in the UK. And that's because our soils are really high quality. They are good for the environment. Their nutritional content and our understanding and our, as I call it, our boffinness, the team that work in that is exceptional. And they will apply the right soil to any project or any specification that is required of them. But then one of the price, our products are going to be more expensive for that. It'll meet the specification of the building, of the landscaping side of the architecture. But ultimately, if the contractor doing it goes, well, actually, we need to save some money, so we're going to go and buy the shitty soil from down the road for half the price. Again, we can't. And again, it becomes such a shame because you do all this hard work, and ultimately, there are limiting factors that stop it happening.
I do think that there will be a real pivot as we start to look at cost not being just a monetary economic cost, but also an environmental cost. And I think there's a lot of work that's being done to assess that and have to report on that.
Well, I think, and I think the world is truly changing, but I think it just takes time. And I think we probably run away with ourselves. Technology moves incredibly fast. And we forget that whilst tech moves very fast, because we can deploy it like that, new versions of apps, new, TikTok suddenly explodes and becomes that, and our way of working and our way of engaging with people and stuff changes. But we forget other stuff takes longer because tech moves so quickly. I was recently at Foster and Partners office in London having a tour. So of course, Foster and Partners, Lord Foster is one of the leading architects in the world. His practice is phenomenal. And anybody that ever gets the chance to go there and see how this, and it's a business, works is honestly breathtaking. They wouldn't call themselves an architecture practice, sorry, they're a design practice. But one of the key things I took away from that, and even given our business works in that world to some extent, was how architecture has evolved and changed. So when we build a building, or when they design a building nowadays, or they're tendering or they're doing, it isn't just about the concrete and the steel and the glass. And the environmental factor isn't just that. It's, can we get eco concrete? One of the big things I took away was 50% of the site might be landscaping. And that's a hugely, and they've thought about what they're doing in the project, and Foster is definitely a leader in this space. It's about far more than the physical construction and the building itself, and it's far more about the bigger piece and using lots of, whether it be soil or plants or other things, to make up that. And that's the I suppose the physicalness of the change. You can really see it there through examples like that, and I can't wait to see more of it. When you're building a skyscraper in New York, instead of taking up the whole block, and that's the concrete and the steel, you might see half of it being concrete and steel and half of it being landscaping, to give back and develop and be innovative and environmental in different ways.
I think that's incredibly interesting when you talk about the overarching environmental impact as well, because obviously we were talking a lot around the importance of breaking down silos within the business to enable rapid growth. But actually the breaking down of looking at materials when it comes to construction as well as maintenance, I think is incredibly important when it comes to things such as environmental impact and making sustainable decisions for the long term. So you've clearly achieved a lot throughout your time at Bennie Group. If there was one thing you know now that you wish you'd known when you started your journey, what would it be?
There's probably the things I think of that I probably wouldn't say on camera because I might get into trouble. The one, and I'm going to bring it back to people again. I think when I took over running the group in 2020, and I kind of took on running the business and being the lead and the figurehead that people kind of look towards. Instead of it being mum, they look to me. no amount of training or life experience teaches you about the people.
Yeah.
So if you go to university and do a management degree, which I did, I went to York University, you learn lots of things about do an HR module, do a law module, do a quantum, do some maths module, which I basically failed. Go and do all of those. No, and you do the HR module, but nobody teaches you that actually the biggest part of what you will do in a business is interact with people. And if you are managing them and leading them, then actually that's the hardest bit of the job. Because unlike a piece of software, they are not zero and ones, and they don't operate in, they don't follow kind of you do this here and then they will do that there, go there, and then anything can happen. And for me, I wish I'd kind of had a greater. It's important to learn, but if I had some kind of notional understanding that people are going to be they're going to be your biggest asset, but also your biggest challenge, that might have made me approach some things slightly differently. But every day's a learning day.
Fantastic. Well, it's been brilliant having you with us today, Matthew. And we did it. We deconstructed digital.